upper is going to convert it to uppercase.
Okay.
Not too sure about swap case, though. That's an interesting one.
Well, something tells me if I go like this, there you go.
Oh,
there's our little output.
It took everything uppercase, made it lowercase, and everything lowercase made it uppercase. So it swapped the casing.
There you go. So there's our lower, there's our upper, and then you'll notice on the swap case, and let me kind of highlight that little hello right there. What you're going to notice is that little hello, let me zoom in on it, that first little y there is now lower, whereas when we initially had it, it was upper. So we took all the cases and just, well, swapped them out.
Neat.
Perfect. Well, let's go in and kind of demonstrate that.
Yeah, because that's very useful, because sometimes people type things in. I've been working things where people maybe typed in an abbreviation for a country, and you want a 3-letter abbreviation, and some people type it lowercase, and some people type it uppercase, and some do like the first letter uppercase and the rest in lowercase. But you kind of want it consistent when you're keeping the information or storing it in a database or something later. So being able to take the data they've inputted, switching it to uppercase, so even no matter how they entered it, I wanted an uppercase. That would be awesome.
Yep. Yeah, consistency in a database. A lot of people have been asking database questions. Yeah, consistency in a database. That's a big thing.
Yep.
All right. So let me come back over to here, and I'm going to just kind of update my code, and I'm going to say country equals input. And let's go, what country do you live in? And we'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm also going to say country equals country dot, oh, something cool is happening.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, later? Okay, that little box is cool.
It's kind of cool. Okay, all right. So in any event, I'm going to go and I'm just going to say upper, like that. So what that's going to do, and this is, kind of a little bit complex here, but I want to talk through it. So let's kind of go how Python's going to read this. So what Python is going to do is it's going to read the right side first. Now the reason that it's going to read the right side first is because it's seeing an equal sign. So it knows something's going to be coming into country here. What is it? Well, it's going to be whatever's over here, so it's going to run that side first.
Okay.
So what it's going to do is it's going to run that side first, which means that it's going to convert that into uppercase letters. So if I had typed in FR for France, it's then going to convert that to capital F, capital R.
Yep.
That's going to be the first part. So this is now what we have, and then it's going to replace what was in our country box with that new value. So what was in there before is now going to be gone and replaced with something else. So again, just to kind of beat this analogy into the ground here, basically imagine, if you will, that you had, let's say, 2 pieces of bread inside of a little box.
Okay.
Keep going with me here.
I'm waiting for it.
Okay, so I had 2 pieces of bread inside of a box. What I did was I pulled out those 2 pieces of bread, and I then put peanut butter and jelly on those. And then I put it back into the box. So what I did, that box is still the exact same placeholder, but I just simply modified the value that was in there and made it something new. So instead of just 2 pieces of bread, now I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Very nice.
Yes. So what I've done is I've modified what we had and put it back into that box.
So now if you display it on the screen, we should actually see the country in uppercase, regardless of how someone's typed it in.
Exactly. So let's go in and say, hello name. And by the way, I realize that I'm sure that the chat window is abuzz with people yelling at me for this. So let me just kind of go with single quotes here. I kind of went back and forth a little bit on single and double, so I'll just go with single.
Trying to be consistent.
I am.
Good habits. Good job.
Yep. All right. So see, kind of going back to, learn good habits right away. That way, you don't do things like that. Here we go. You live in... And let's go in and say country.
Awesome.
Waiting for my red squigglies to go away. Perfect. So now let me go ahead and hit start. What is my name? Christopher.
Yep.
Enter. What country do I live in? U.S. Whoops, we'll do it in lower.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, okay.
We'll do it in lower. Actually, I'm going to go with FR, even though I don't live in France.
Okay.
But I'm going to go with FR just so we can see the casing a little better, because a big U, big S isn't
that's fine.
as clear. So now I'll just go in and type that in.
Very nice.
And sure enough, it says, hello, Christopher, you live in FR. Perfect. Okay. I also want to do this. I'm going to put in a line break right at the very beginning there, just to kind of make that a little
Make it look nicer by putting it onto a nice, tidy new line?
Yep.
There you go. Makes a nice little space in front of it.
There
Very cool.
Excellent. All right, so let me go back to my slides here.
I like how you're starting to put it all together. You know, taking what we learned in the previous module, using it inside this module, and that is how coding tends to work. You know, you pick up little things, and what you picked up earlier, suddenly you use later on in your code.
Exactly, exactly. So now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the different things that are available. So lower, upper, swap case are different string functions. Ooh, function. So function, just again, is something with a name that will do something for us, like print and input, upper, lower, all functions. They will do
things for
something. Exactly. Now, because of the fact that we're storing that string inside of a variable, we can use any of those string functions to manipulate those strings. Awesome. All right. Speaking of awesome.
Yes.
What in the world was that little pop-up list?
That is one of the most awesome things that I love about Visual Studio, and there are other coding editors that have it too, but it's called IntelliSense. And what IntelliSense does for you is when Visual Studio knows you're working with a string variable, when you hit that little dot to type in upper, it actually is intelligent enough, hence IntelliSense, to know, oh, wait, you want to call one of the functions to manipulate that string. And Visual Studio knows all the valid functions. So it will actually pop up a little box for you that lists every single function you can choose from. So this is great. So you don't have to remember exactly how something's typed or the exact spelling. Like, was that case swap or swap case, or was that to upper or upper? Little details like that, it'll be right there in the IntelliSense. So that basically, and it's great for lazy coders because instead of having to type the function name, I can just select it from the list.
Exactly. Yeah. And in fact, here, let me, I think the best way to sort of see this is to go in and do it.
Yeah, I think a demo is good for this.
Exactly. So let's just kind of go right back to our country.upper, and I'm just going to eliminate that, and I'm just going to do it again. So we'll just go ahead and say country equals, and let me go ahead and say country, and then you'll notice that if I hit my dot here, now what you're going to notice is that I get that little list of available methods or functions that I can now use. So what I could do is I could say country dot, and then you'll notice that as I start typing, it'll automatically start highlighting what it thinks I want. So since I typed the letter U, it's thinking I probably want upper. Makes sense. Now you'll also notice dot U. Ooh, something cool happened. Let's do that again. So I hit a dot. Typed U, and you'll notice that upper was highlighted.
It was.
Now I could double click.
Yeah, if you're a mouse person, that's how you're going to do it. You're going to click the value you want from that list. But if you're a keyboard person, because some people like to do everything with the keyboard.
Exactly. So if I say U, and if I type the next special character, like a parenthesis, like a dot, that I want after that, it will automatically complete that.
Cool.
So you'll notice that I went paren, and it automatically completed that.
So you typed, so after the U, you typed an open parentheses.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I can go in and I can say country equals country dot U, or dot U, open paren, close paren. So right there, I've saved myself from having to type out PPER. I've saved myself 4 whole keystrokes there.
And score points for the lazy program.
Oh, absolutely.
You can use the Enter key as well, though, can't you?
You can use the Enter key. So you can say U and then hit that. And that, but it just won't give you that paren.
The open parentheses. Okay.
And you also can say tab as well, and that will also work.
Enter key, tab key, but the advantage of the parentheses is that it gives you the opening parentheses.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. All right. So with that, you're going to notice here that we've got a list of some different functions here. And
all right. This is interesting.
What it is that they do. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of leave it there, and I'll skip right to the answer.
Oh, you're going to the answer. Okay. So we're going to reverse engineer.
Well, sort of. Yeah. So the first big thing that I want to highlight is we're obviously not going to go through every single function that's available.
No, that would take a very long time.
We'll be here a lot longer than 2 days.
Yes.
The second thing is, and this is really the main goal of the slide here, is you're going to notice that a lot of this is intuitive. So you're going to notice, for example, something like replace. What does replace mean in English?
It means replace one thing with something else.
Yeah, it means swap it out. Yeah, exactly. So you're going to notice that we said replace hello, come here, with hi. And so sure enough, when I go in and I take a look, that's exactly what happened. Now, you're also going to notice that we've got capitalize, which would have put in that capital H there, which we happen to already have. So that's why we're kind of getting that little display. It hasn't changed, but it would capitalize, put in that first little H. You're also going to notice that we've got count, and let me escape out just to clear out my screen here. And so count, of course, is going to count the number of O's that happen to appear.
Okay.
Now, the one that's maybe a little bit different than what you would expect is find. Now, find, of course, is going to, well, find something. But the question then becomes, well, what's it going to return?
Yeah. How is it going to tell me if it found the word world inside that string?
Exactly. So let's reverse engineer here. Let's take a look at the number that we got. So the number that we got was 6. All right. Well, what's the significance of 6? Well, you're going to notice right up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you're going to notice that there was 6 characters before world.
Okay.
So it's telling us the number of characters that came before whatever it is that we tried to find. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, we got counting based on zeros, so it's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth, and
I was
6.
going to say, it's actually telling you it's a nice way to remember it, though. In fact, it's telling you the number position of the first letter of the string
exactly.
that's returning.
Exactly. Yeah, that, in fact, if I go back and I do this again, and I started with the 1, 2, 3, just to try to keep it a little bit simpler. Yeah. But counting in Python, like in most programming languages, starts with 0. So you'll notice that it's actually 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then finally 6.
Right.
So what it's giving me is it's giving me the position,
where
starting position,
where what it was searching
where
for.
that word world is. Now, that's something where you might look at that and you might kind of go, well, all right. But you are going to notice that that is pretty consistent throughout every programming language.
Yeah.
That if you're working on a lot of curly-based languages like C# is like this, where it's got index of works just like find here. So again, going back to something that we mentioned before, that what we're trying to do is really kind of teach you these concepts. And so find, like index of. Now again, we're not going to memorize everything.
Yep.
So how do we go in and find them? IntelliSense, and honestly, that's
IntelliSense is great.
probably the best. When in doubt, type the name of the variable, hit dot.
Yep, and see what pops up.
Exactly. There is documentation.
Yep.
F1 can help you. And then, of course, internet searches.
Absolutely.
Stack
Nothing
Overflow, Bing, yeah. Just www.bing.com, type in whatever it is that you want.
I want to convert a string to uppercase and see what comes back on your internet search. And make sure you specify the programming language.
Yes.
I am a Python, how to convert string to uppercase. And you will find a link to documentation or a blog post or something in Stack Overflow with some suggestions.
Exactly.
Almost every time.
Yep. Yeah, that's really the way to go. So with that, let's talk a little bit about something like, what happens if they entered in a postal code and we want to convert into uppercase letters.
Because in Canada, postal codes follow a pattern of letter, number, letter, number, letter, number.
Yep.
But they are supposed to be all uppercase.
Yep. And so sure enough, you're going to notice, you can just simply do that to upper. And we've actually already done a demo on to
demo.
upper. Yeah, so I think we're good there. And you are going to notice that every now and then, IntelliSense doesn't appear.
And that's annoying. You start relying on it, so when it doesn't appear, you're like, where's my IntelliSense? Bring it back.
And there can be a lot of reasons for this. Sometimes it's because you've got a bug earlier on in your code, you mistype something. And sometimes, and we talked about this earlier, that with variables, you can just simply declare them on the fly. And when Python runs, it will figure out what that variable type is, which is fantastic, when it runs. But unfortunately, at that moment, Visual Studio can't always figure out what's about to happen. And you see this with Python, you see this with JavaScript. And so sometimes what you need to do is just sort of seed, if you will, Python.
Give it a hint.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of tell it what it is that you're doing. And so you'll notice right here that what we did was we just went in and we said postal code equals and then an empty string.
Yep.
Or put a space in it. Either way would have worked.
Would have worked, yeah.
But, just put something in there that's a string, and so then from there on forward, it will know that it's a string. So you kind of told it right up front, hey, this is going to be a string, and then it was able to go in and treat it as such.
Yeah, that actually came up earlier in the Q&A. Somebody was like, hey, my IntelliSense isn't popping up, and I'm not sure why. Said, if you have a variable name, and you hit the dot to try and bring up the functions to manipulate the contents of that variable, to work with that variable, how can Python know if you're working with a string or a number or a date?
Exactly.
You have to give it a hint.
Yep.
So if it's not popping up and you want that IntelliSense, you might, one of those good habits, you may want to declare your variables ahead of time or create the variables ahead of time with the correct data type. So later in your code, when you're accessing the functions, you get that IntelliSense.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool.
So I've got good news and I've got bad news. Good news is functions are very powerful, can help us out.
Yeah?
Bad news is gives us new opportunities to go in and make mistakes. So you are going to notice that each little line there does have a mistake. And if we just kind of kick through them here real quickly with hello world, what is it?
I think you're missing quotes around the string hello world.
There you go. And with the next one?
The variable name 23 message is not a valid. We cannot start a variable name with a number.
Yep. And then on the next one?
A variable name, I think that's intended to be a single variable called new message.
There you go.
And so you can't have a space in your variable name.
All right. I'm going to skip the next one, and I'm going to go down to item 5 there.
That's a sneaky one, and that's the kind of thing that gets you. I forgot an S in my variable name. And so there is no variable MESAGE. That should have 2 S's.
Okay. And next?
This is a sneaky one. You know what it is? Because the syntax looks good, but the count function expects me to tell it what character I want to count. So I forgot to pass it the value that I want to look for and count.
And you're also going to notice right up here, along those same lines, kind of a sneaky one, you're going to notice no parentheses are there. And that's what that problem is.
I make that typing mistake so often in my code. That's probably one of my most common mistakes, is I forget to put the open close parentheses, and you get these weird error messages, and you're going, why is it complaining about line 6 of my code? And on line 5 of your code, you forgot the open and close parentheses.
Exactly. Yep. So let's kind of come back right over here to my system. So kind of a couple of rules here. Number 1, if you're using a function, you must have parentheses.
Yep.
That's number 1. But number 2 is I'm going to go in and I'm just going to type out count. And what you're going to notice is that when I go in and I open up that parenthesis, you're going to notice that I get a little bit of inline documentation as well. Now, unfortunately, it's not always as clear as you might want. You're going to notice that it says return the number of non-overlapping occurrences of substring in string s start end.
That's clear as mud.
Okay,
meaning not clear at all.
Yeah.
But it does at least give you a hint that I have to enter a value.
It does.
This is the point where if I wasn't sure what to do, I'd go and I'd do an internet search and I'd find some code examples where someone had written me a nice blog post explaining what it did.
And that's really it. Yep.
That's what we do.
Exactly. Okay. So, what do you say we close this off and give everyone a challenge here?
Yes, we need a challenge.
So your challenge is create that program that allows somebody to personalize a story. So take a page from a book or just make up a story. You know, blank ran up a blank with a blank.
Yep.
There you go. And then prompt people, kind of, old little school where you filled in the little blanks there. Go ahead and prompt people to punch in a name, a noun, an adjective, a verb, whatever it is that you want, and then display that story out. And then again, for extra credit, you could go in and try to correct things like casing and so forth. But I really say kind of focus in on that top one, those top 2 bullet items right there.
That's just said. It is extra credit. Once you get that working, then go back and see if you can add the extra functionality.
Exactly. So, and again, if you get a little stuck, feel free to go ahead and grab the solutions that we have inside of
But remember, our
Demo.
Suggested solution. You may come up with a solution that is even better than ours, and that's all good.
And that's it. So congratulations. You can all now write a program that's going to interact with a user.
Yes. Congrats.
Excellent. So what do you say we take 10?
Yeah.
And then let's come on back and let's talk about something other than strings.
Yes, because I think when we want to get to the next level of power, we need to work with numbers, and we need to figure out what we can do with those. So we're going to take ourselves to the next level and start messing with some math.
All right, we'll see you guys back here in 10 minutes. All right, well, welcome back. This is, of course, Introduction to Programming using Python. I'm still joined by Susan Ibach. I'm still Christopher Harrison. And we last left off playing around with variables, playing around with strings, but not everything.
No,
is a string.
No, we talked about how the purpose of programming is really to allow us to solve problems. And a lot of the problems that we face day to day involve numbers.
Yep.
So one of the things we need to get into is how do we start dealing with numbers inside of our code?
That's a great question. How do we start dealing with numbers inside of our code?
I'm so glad you asked.
Well, thank you.
So let's.
It's like I knew the module that was coming.
It's like you read the agenda.
Hey, you know?
So a lot of the problems we do encounter when we're working with code do involve working with math. You might need to calculate how much you're going to pay on a mortgage. You know the total cost of a house or total cost of a car you want to purchase. You want to pay it off in 5 years or 30 years, and you need to calculate, well, what would the monthly payment be? So you can figure out if you can afford that car or that mortgage. Or maybe you're trying to figure out how much something is going to cost when you add taxes. Because that's one of those fun things, in Canada, oh my gosh, it's great fun. Different provinces have different tax levels. There's a federal tax, there's a provincial tax. Some items are taxed, some aren't. How much should I leave someone as a tip at a restaurant? How much milk do I need to use in this recipe if I double the recipe? There's so many different scenarios where math is required to solve the problem.
So there is going to be math today.
So I'm afraid there is going to be math today.
Okay.
My apologies. But I promise we'll take a nice long break after the math, a nice meal break there, so that everybody can recover from the math.
Okay, excellent.
So it's very important that when we're working with our variables, that we can store numbers in the variables as well as strings. And if you actually take a look at the slide here, you'll notice it just says, I've got a variable called age, trying to stick with those meaningful variable names like we were talking about last module. And I've just set it to 42. Now, one of the things about this is how do you think, and I'm going to, maybe Christopher, I could hit you up for this one. How do you think Python knows that that value age is a number and not a string? So if you look at the slide, what's different about that code?
No quotes.
Bingo. That is key. If you put quotes around 42, it is now a string that contains a 4 and a 2.
Yep.
But when you store a value but has no quotes around it, then if it's a numeric value, you're now basically creating a numeric variable. And you can print it out, you can store a width, you can store a height, you can do math with it. So you can multiply a width times a height. Now, a lot of the symbols you work with when you're doing math are very similar to what you normally work with. If you notice here, I could do addition and subtraction, but you might notice here that I've got, that wasn't quite what I meant to do, sorry about that. Fix that, I meant to use the highlighter, that was my mistake. There we go.
I do that constantly.
Yeah, so you've got this asterisk symbol here between the words width and height. In programming languages, Python is no exception, most programming languages use an asterisk for multiplication, even though I know when we were learning math in school, they used the little X symbol for it. But the problem is X is a letter and it causes confusion. So we use the asterisk to indicate multiplication inside Python. You can combine addition and subtraction. Addition is just a plus symbol, subtraction is just your standard minus symbol. You can use parentheses to indicate the order of operations in your math. So I can calculate a perimeter by taking double the width and adding that to double the height, or I could say double the width and the height added together. I mean, it's the same end result. So I can do basic math using these different numeric values. The most common math operations you're likely to work with, you're definitely going to end up doing some addition and subtraction. Nice thing is the symbols on those haven't changed, so you already know this.
Plus, minus.
Plus, minus.
Fantastic.
Division is the same slash you're used to. Multiplication is the one that's going to confuse you. Instead, it's an asterisk, not an X. If you want something to calculate a value, you want it squared, or you want it cubed, or to the power of something. The exponent is actually asterisk, asterisk. So that's one of the more confusing ones there, is the double asterisk. So if I take 5 and I want the number value of 5 squared, then it's going to be 5 asterisk asterisk 2 gives me the squared value of 25. So that's 5 times 5. And here is the strangest one, modulo. You're going, what on earth is modulo, and what does that percent symbol mean? That does not return, and it's important to realize that it is a percent symbol, but it's not a percentage. This is not going to take a value of 0.01 and say, oh, 0.01 would be 1%, and 0.25 would be 25%. That's not what this is doing at all.
Yep.
If actually, what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to sort of flip up a little whiteboard here. I think that's the easiest way to do this. Whoops, not that slide, thank you. And if I go here and I give myself a little pen, except I don't want a red pen. I think we need a better color so we can see a little better. Nice red pen. I want you to think back to when you learned long division. And for a lot of us, this was a long time ago, and we rarely do long division anymore.
Do we have to admit how long ago it was?
No.
Okay.
I already explained I'm 29.
Okay,
So
right, yes.
it can't be that long ago that I learned long division.
Because you're 29.
That's right.
Yes.
So let's say I've got a number, I've got the number 5. And I want to, and apparently my fingers aren't as good at drawing as Christopher's, so I'm going to have to use a mouse here. So I've got the number 5, and I want to divide the number 43. I want to divide it by 5.
Okay.
And you think back to how we were taught to do this, you would say, well, 5 goes into 43 8 times.
Okay.
So we'd write the number 8 up here.
Yep.
And we go 8 times 5 equals 40, which leaves me a remainder of 3.
Okay.
Now, that remainder, if I can just get my little highlighter going, this remainder, that's what's returned by modulo.
Okay.
So modulo actually returns the remainder of a division.
I could see that being very helpful if I'm looking for like striping, or if I need to do something every like 5th time. I could see that being very helpful for things like that.
Well, if you've ever been looked at a really big report, and when you look at a big report, or sometimes even on an Excel spreadsheet, and you've got a lot of data displayed on the screen, have you ever noticed that sometimes some of the options for formatting your table allow you to highlight every second line? Well, the coder had to have some way of saying, how do I know I'm on the 2nd line, the 4th line, the 6th line? Modulo is a programmer's trick for detecting, do this every 2nd time, or do this every 3rd time, or do this every 4th time. Because if you do let's say you want to do something every 2nd time. Basically you say, if the modulo is 0, if modulus 2 returns a 0, so if the remainder is 0 when I divide by 2, I'm on the 2nd time, or the 4th time, or the 6th time, or the 8th time.
Yep.
I know some of you are out there going, whatever you say, Susan, I'm totally lost. Just to say, you will encounter situations. It's a programmer's trick for detecting a frequency of something, to do something every 2nd time, 3rd time. It's also a security feature that's used in a lot of number generation. Your credit cards a lot of times use modulo behind the scenes. Employee numbers. What they'll often do is to see if a credit card number is a valid number. So you can't just type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I guess that'd be 9, 10, 1, 2, 3 as a credit card number and hope that somebody out there has a credit card number, so hey, I can buy this book with that random stranger's credit card number. What they actually do is they use a modulo and inside a formula to generate credit card numbers. So your American Express or Visa or MasterCard number, the way it's generated is they take a number, they multiply it usually by 11, and then they add 50 to it or 100 to it. So anytime they get a credit card number, they go, if I can subtract this 50 and divide it by 11, and that gives me no remainder, I know it's at least theoretically possible that's a valid credit card number. So, as I said, don't get too stressed out over it. I don't expect you to be coding things with modulo in the next 30 minutes, but I just want you to be aware that this is a function that, although we don't use it a lot day to day in our lives, it comes up remarkably often in certain scenarios when you're writing code. So, that's just something to be aware of. And it's the percentage symbol is the way we do it in Python. It's one of the ones where the syntax really varies from programming language to programming language.
Yeah, sometimes it's a backslash.
Some of them have functions.
Yeah, it really just kind of depends.
So Python, we do have it. It's the percent symbol. Now, the other thing we have to remember is the rules for math haven't changed since we were in high school, or back, not necessarily high school, but since we were in school. When you're doing mathematics, there was always an order of operations. Whatever you had in parentheses would be executed first. Then anything to the power of will be executed next.
Yep.
Then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. These basic rules apply when you're writing formulas in your programs as well. So if you write a